Just Hello, everyone. Welcome to another awesome interview for the Corporate Hustle Virtual Summit. I'm Demishia Samuels, your launch strategist and LinkedIn expert, and this is the 5th annual. So we are excited to bring you new faces, new thought leaders, new experts out here in these internet streets that are helping you and me create income inside and outside of corporate America, because we understand that corporate is, it's loyal, but it's not stable. Well, actually, it's stable but not loyal. Y'all know how I do. But it's Saturday. It's our Saturday interviews. Because you know what? I am a corporate hustler and I do interview people on the weekends, although I guess that's against hustle culture. That's, the soft life, you people, whatever y'all out here doing in these internet streets. But I have somebody who's here in the mastermind. He's in my mastermind. He's awesome. When you say something about branding, listen, it's going to go left. If it ain't right, it's going to go left. He's going to start analyzing it. So I thought that he would be excellent to get our minds right when it comes to all things branding, visual, and what actually does it take to create your actual brand and bring it to life. So Victor, let the people know who you are and welcome to the Corporate Hustle Virtual Summit.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Demishia. My name is Victor Jacques of VAJ Design. We work with business coaches and strategists who have outgrown their brands, who are ready to take their businesses to the next level through an elevated rebrand. And so basically what my business specializes in is, like I said, it's visual and voice rebranding. So that includes anything from on the visual side, logos, packaging, stationery, digital media, websites, mobile apps. And then on the voice side, taglines, mission statement, vision statements, overall copywriting content. So in a nutshell, that's what we bring to the table.
Okay, so how did you decide that you were good at this?
So it was kind of took a little bit of it was a little bit of a journey. So as a child, I was always artistic. So I always used to draw. I always had a pad and pencil in my hand, and but I was also really into math and science as well. So when I went to school, I was trying to combine all those three things together into the same field. And originally, I ended up my first interest was architecture. That was kind of the direction I was headed. And then I actually ended up, instead of going to school for architecture specifically, I went for architectural engineering for a year. I tried that out. And what I realized was that though it satisfied the math and science part of my love, it did not satisfy the artistic creative side at all. The architectural part of architectural engineering is not really, what it's really just engineering. Architecture engineering is engineering at the end of the day. So I changed directions and I wanted to do something more artistic and creative driven. And that's how I ended up going to school for graphic design. Best decision that I made. I've been doing it professionally ever since.
Hey, oh wow. So you just came out the gate like, listen, be a graphic designer. Did you always work for yourself, or did you work for a company and then decide to go into business for yourself?
So I've worked for a number of companies throughout my career. Everywhere from, I used to work for like a small tech startup where it was only like about 20 of us that was doing mobile app design. I've worked for a health and wellness company working on mobile and web applications. And I've worked in the health and Medicaid and Medicare field, also working on websites, mobile apps, and various digital media. I used to work for an ad agency working on websites and digital media for major pharmaceutical companies. So I've worked, various companies, small teams, big teams, different types of creative work. However, I always did do freelance work on the side, just to keep my skills sharp in various different ways. Because when you work for a company, you really work specifically on the type of work that they do, the type of clientele that they do. And I didn't want to get left behind in the field. So I wanted to make sure that I was always doing work for different types of clients. So that was always something that I was doing on the side. But eventually I decided it was time to go ahead and officially launch my business. So I did.
Wow. Okay. I love it. So we just, listen, when you got these skills, when you were talking about your background, I kept thinking about industrial design. And
Yeah.
then I thought about like UX editors or UX designers when you were saying like your background. So the fact that you worked on mobile apps, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
I have math and science, but I can't draw anything to save my life. I can't visually space it out. I'll be like, what? Don't it all look good? This crazy font and that crazy font mixed together. Let me ask you this. Let's start with the basics, right? How do you define a brand? Because we have all these different definitions of branding. When you think of the word brand, what comes to your mind and what would you like us to know about that word?
So, so I have two answers for that. I would say, to basically say it in the fewest amount of words possible, you can say your brand is basically your first impression that is presented to the world. And I use that phrase because the first impression, if you think about that, there's a lot of different aspects to it. And one of the biggest misconceptions about branding is that people think that it is just a couple little things. A lot of times when you say, oh, my branding's together, I have my logo and my fonts and my color scheme, and they think that's branding. That is not. That is a very small portion of what branding is. Important nonetheless, especially your logo. Your logo is actually more important than a lot of people realize, but it is just one aspect of it. And so when you think about your first impression that is presented to the world, there's a lot of different aspects to that. There is your voice, your brand voice. So the way things are written, is the tones something playful? Is there humor in it? Is it really serious? Does it use a lot of like industry terms? You know what I'm saying? It needs to speak directly to your clientele. Then there's the visual side of it that needs to complement that. So you have your logo, obviously, which is kind of like the foundation of the visual brand, but that needs to be that has to work in a lot of different mediums. It has to be clear. It has to be visually engaging. Your name, the name of your business is also part of your brand. Your tagline is part of your brand. Your color scheme, obviously, your fonts, obviously, your and then obviously the rest of your assets, right? Even your website and your social media page, like all of those things, all those assets that live on those platforms are all part of your brand. They all need to be looked at in a cohesive manner. And so when you think about all of that, you realize, oh, well, branding is actually quite it's a pretty comprehensive thing. It's not just these couple of things. And when you think about it in a really comprehensive way, then you start to really appreciate how important it is, and how important it is to have it on point.
I love that. I always tell people that when I think of the word brand, I always think of like your reputation, right? So
Mhm.
your pure reputation. And to go deeper into branding, how do or should we even be thinking about how to make our brands, I guess, let's say iconic, if that makes sense. So when you see the check mark, right, I just say the check mark brand, right? You see that swoosh that has its sound. You immediately know what it is. It doesn't even need a tagline, even though it does have one. Just do it. It does have one, but it can stand alone. It can stand with its tagline. It can stand through athletes. It can stand through through it all. How does one begin to put a foundation down, right, to make themselves a brand that can stand alone
So,
without words, I guess?
yep. So that's a great question. So um, there is a process that is it's best to go through when developing a brand. The beginning of it is actually really information gathering and research, both in terms of your industry, your competitors, but also you as the business owner, and like the business itself, like what your offering is, who your target audience is. All of those things need to be taken into consideration because you want it to represent all of those things all at the same time. So there's a research component that goes into it where we will, like I said, we'll look at others in your industry to see what they're doing. Want to make sure that we have your mission and vision together, your what your transformation is that you offer, and who your clientele is. Your clientele is a big one because if it's let's say it's something to do with the medical field and your clients are doctors, then the tone that you can use, the language you can use, the visuals that you can use can be something that speaks more specific to them. You can have more technical language that's involved in your brand because other people on the outside, they look at it and they're like, I don't know what those words mean. It doesn't matter because it's not for them anyway, right? So all of those things need to be taken into consideration. And so when you start from that point, as opposed to saying, well, I have this idea, this is the name I like, and I have this idea for this logo, let's just get rolling there. You've skipped a lot of foundational steps. You want to actually make this good design in general, specifically when it comes to branding. Should be actually more data driven than anything else. People look at it as it's just an aesthetic thing. It is aesthetic, but it's data driven. It needs to be effective. It needs to actually be you should be able to quantify the effectiveness of your brand. And if you can't do that, then your brand isn't really fully established. And sometimes what you may personally prefer aesthetically might not be the best thing that's for your brand, right? And so that's why it's important to make sure that you're doing all your due diligence on the back end because your brand needs to work. So.
Oh, no, I love it. So we have a mix of basically, I love that it's data driven, right? And so that kind of sent me into a whirlwind of we have the data driven brands, right? But at what point, or like when you're first starting out, like say, and you choose your name as your brand, let's say the name of your company is you. So you do, and what if you yourself you're the personality, or let's talk about personal brands, right? Because
Mhm.
that's the realm that a lot of us start out in, is personal brands.
Yep.
So of course it's you, but having that fight with yourself with, these are my favorite colors, this is me, because so how do we balance our authentic selves versus what the data is telling us when it comes to building like a personal brand?
That's a great question. So many times there is a delicate balance that you can strike between the two, and that's really what you want to get to. Because particularly when it is a personal brand, that is one of those unique situations where, because it's a personal brand, you are the brand is you, and when people are attracted to their brand, it's because they're attracted to you. They're attracted to your authentic self that you're bringing to the table. So in a case like that, your brand needs to strike a balance between being authentically you, but still also attract your clients and not repel them in any way. And in a case like that, I would say that, just as an example, you would let's say that there is a certain like level of quality that that works the best, or is just, I guess, recommended by the experts, like designers, for example. Like we study design. We have, like I said, it's data driven. So even though it's aesthetic, we actually understand a lot of the principles of design and how they work and why they work and things like that. So for example, if somebody might say, well, I like this particular font and I want it to be like really small under, like, I want this visual thing here and I want the font to be really small along the bottom. Well, that may be your personal preference, right? But from a design perspective and from an effectiveness standpoint, if you have a really hard to read font that's very small, that from a practicality standpoint is problematic because now that's hard to read. When people see that logo, they can't read it. So it may represent you may feel it represents you, but if they can't even read it, they're not going to be able to see the name to know that name is your name to tie it to you in the first place. So there are things that you have to strike a balance. You may say, okay, well, you want this particular font that's hard to read and very small, but let's strike a better balance. How about a font that is like this that you also like, and a design that's that we recommend as designers to knowing all the different ways that all the different usages that it needs to be able to work within.
Yeah, I
Just as
love
an
that.
example.
Yeah, because like my favorite colors were like black, and then I was a Zeta, so I was like, I want royal blue and white. So we went through that phase. But then when I realized that I actually wanted Lux, I think we used, I guess, design and psychology that comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Is kind of what we struck a balance on, and that's where I became green and gold, which was like completely like out of my realm. And I was like, okay. But I did it for the sake of the brand and getting some type of cohesiveness amongst all of my different programs.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to being aesthetically pleasing versus sales strategies and tactics when it comes to designing stuff, how do you strike that balance with those teams? And the example that I think of is how when somebody's like a landing page, like my designer, she might design my landing page and it's beautiful, but then somebody might come and be like, you need to make that button big and orange and completely not the colors that go with my aesthetically pleasing site. So how does your company or you make sure that you are keeping those things in mind, and which one should win out, aesthetically pleasing versus sales strategies or tactics, when we're actually designing things?
So that's a good question. And I want to mention real quick that the strategy component to sales and marketing is also critically important and actually needs to work hand in hand with design. So sometimes people can have a strong brand but not good strategy, or they could have good strategy and not good branding. Those you need to have both of those things. Uh, if one is bad, it can make the other suffer. So you want both to be strong and they need to work well together. So to answer your question more specifically, particularly when it comes to that point about like landing pages, things like that, good design actually is a lot of it is in alignment with good strategy when it comes to like layout and things like that. So if you have good branding and things are well designed, then it can accommodate for a variety of different things, including visual prominence. So if you say, well, that button needs to be more prominent, then you need to be able to do that within your design without just saying, well, let's just use orange, which has nothing to do with your color palette, just because somebody just said that. It's like, no, no, no. The orange is not the solution. The solution is to make the button more prominent. Somebody just said orange because they just felt like saying orange, but we can make the button more prominent without just going off into some random color scheme that has nothing to do with the brand. But the important things, especially when it comes to landing pages, layouts, things like that, is a proper readability and hierarchy. So you need to, like, at first glance, you want people to come to that page and they need to be able to, without even having to read a whole lot, at first glance, they can just skim like a couple of the biggest, most prominent words at the top and see like a button that they easily can recognize. That's a button that should be able to click on it, and it's whatever it says on the button makes me understand what that is. Register for this, sign me up for this, buy now, whatever that main call to action is. They need to be able to see all of that before they even scroll on the page, right? As soon as they land there, they need to see all these things at a high level. So you don't want to jumble it up with a whole bunch of stuff and have stuff that's really small and intricate and just lay out all over the place, and inconsistency with your brand, all that type of stuff. But all those things can all be accomplished while still having a strong, consistent brand.
I love that. Okay, that makes sense. Like the objective was to make it more prominent, but it doesn't have to like lead astray from the whole thing. That makes
Right.
perfect sense.
Yep.
Now, like I said, like I always tell people, by day I do some of everything at my company, and I will moonlight into helping them tag emails and do things. And what I used to notice as I reviewed all the HTML to make sure it worked with the vendor is certain terms and images that I used to just think that they made up, but I realized these were industry terms. So, can you tell us about what they call the hero image or the hero whatever when
Yeah.
we're doing design? Because people will see it and not be like, "What's the hero?" When it comes to that. But I feel like it's a critical thing that is basic now, basic design marketing that people should know as owners. So, if you get any other industry terms like that that you think we should know, let me know.
Yeah. So, sorry, hold on one quick second. Sorry. Hello. I apologize. Sorry about that.
You need me to repeat the question? Or are you good?
No, I'm good with the question. So, yeah, so there's a lot of different terms for different things. Hero image is definitely one. And I don't know where the term actually came from, but it just represents like, when they say hero, they mean like, it's like the like the focal point, right? So it is like the prominent thing at the top. So usually a hero image is like the featured banner at the top. It'll be like some image, whether it's a photo or illustration, and it'll be accompanied with like a title or a tagline and a call to action typically, right? And it could be various layouts, could be like image on the left with the title and call to action on the right, or they could overlay on top of one another. There's various ways you could format it. But really it just means that it is like the main focal point when they land on a page.
Like that.
Um, yeah.
What about the what's the other one that whenever I'm in consultations with people and I'm always thinking that stuff is common sense, but they don't. The what is it, above the fold? So how
Yes.
important is above the fold? And tell the
Yeah.
people what that is.
All right. So above the fold is a term that means that when you first land on a page, everything that you see before you have to scroll is what's called above the fold. The bottom of your screen, everything that you can't see below your screen is everything above it is called what's above the fold. What needs to live above the fold is very, very important. That is what I mentioned before. Everything that people need, that you need your visitors to see and know before they scroll. It's crucial that it's up there. If somebody has to scroll before they can click a button or before they can get like a high level understanding of like maybe you have like a big timer that says there's 2 hours left, and then maybe there's like here are the rules, right? But they haven't seen the title yet, and they haven't seen a button that they don't know what this is about, right? So they have to scroll down before they can get that information. That's horrible. You know what I mean? Like that is because what happens is when we are creating these things ourselves, sometimes we're so in the weeds, we're so like engulfed in it and we're creating this content, we're designing these pages that we are thinking in a way where it's like, oh, well, when they come here, they'll see this and then they'll read that and then they'll scroll down. But that's not really how people work generally, right? People are moving fast, especially in the day and age that we're in now. So you have to think of yourself as being in a sea of competition with others. So people are actually scrolling, they're clicking around. So they actually have to have a reason to stop on what they're doing to engage with what they're seeing on your page or on your social media feed or whatever the case may, on your post or your ad or whatever the case may be. So you need to grab their attention immediately. So everything above the fold needs to have like I said, like a title, something that's clear. You want to be as brief as possible with your content. You don't want to have like a huge long title. It's sometimes it's hard to to fight that urge because we want to be as clear and specific, and we want to make sure we understand, okay, it's this, it's for these people, it's for this time, it's for this specific offer. It's like, okay, fine, but can you say that in half those words? Because you don't want people to have to look at a whole block of text, because again, they're moving fast. They're not gonna want to do that. And you don't want to have a button that says like a whole long paragraph in your button. It's like, yes, sign me up for this thing. Click here to learn more. Like those are too many words. Like you could say that in half those words, right? So all of these things you want to keep in consideration. They want to be engaging, compelling, not just from a content side, also from an offer side, and also from a design side. All of those things need to be working together. And when it comes to the fold, we also have to make sure that we consider both desktop and mobile, right? Because those are different. Your website actually it should be what's called responsive. Responsive just means that the layout of your design responds to the size of the screen that it's on automatically. So when you're on a desktop, it looks a certain way. When you're on a tablet, it makes slight adjustments. Things are smaller. The layout adjusts a little bit. And when you're on a phone, it changes again. So all of these things you actually have to check on those. Tablet, not as much, because there's traffic on tablet is much smaller. I mean, you have like 1% of people, so you can show a little bit less attention to that. But mobile number one, because most people are on mobile devices, and your desktop number two. So when you're looking at, okay, well, let me make sure that my video, my title, and my button are above the fold on mobile and also on desktop. You want to check both of those things. So I'm sorry, I know that was kind of long-winded.
Oh, no, good. The people need to know, like you guys know, because having said that, some of the first things you end up doing is building your own lead pages, even sending emails out. How do you feel about, like, when I went on, just even before we got on this interview, when I was sending an email out, it was telling me stuff like, shrink this sentence. You have too many words in this sentence. People respond better to sentences 20 or less. Or now if I'm in my lead pages, it's like 20 checks, and it's like, you know what, this title's too long, or you ask too many questions here and you're doing that. So the way, and I know people talk about AI all the time, but that is a form of AI that we're sitting there looking at, running through. How do you feel about these applications and how they're trying to insert expertise inside of it to get people to have better, I guess, more efficient landing pages, emails, and things of that nature?
Yeah. So you're talking more like around like chat GPT, for example.
Well, you could, well, not necessarily the chat GTP, but it is using that type of technology inside of it. But just simply the design of your emails and how it will check it and basically think, well, in my mind, it's saying like, okay, not instead of paying Victor, but even you don't have a Victor on your team, it now has checks that say, you know what, you use 8 fonts. You might want to narrow that down to 3. It'll tell you that you're doing bad design inside of the applications now. And I was wondering how you felt about that.
So so I look at things like this. I think that there is that our our brands and our businesses, these are all a journey. And so we start at a certain place, and obviously we have goals, we have milestones we want to accomplish. And I think that there is a lot of value in using these certain tools to accomplish what you need to accomplish for where you are, right? So if your budget doesn't, if you don't have the budget to have like a designer or a team of designers and developers to make sure that everything is built from scratch, custom to your liking in every aspect, then using tools like that, using tools like Canva, all of these different things, it makes perfect sense, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that to a degree. But I will say that eventually, as you scale and grow, you are going to want to, bring on the professionals to handle those type of things. I think of it like this, right? Like I mentioned before, I've worked for a variety of different companies on different size teams, different industries. And if these things, were effective enough for like large corporations to use, they wouldn't hire us, right? Like I wouldn't. There's no way I would have there would be no reason for a company that has the money to pay me and a team of other designers and developers and you know, like everybody, all the other components of the team, full-time salaries, benefits, all that type of stuff. If all they had to do was use Canva and some of these other things, right? So I say that for people to keep in mind. You know, those companies that have like the money that a lot of us are striving for, look at what they're doing. They're paying people to do things that because there's value in the expertise that people bring to the table. And so I recommend the sooner you're ready to bring on experts to do these type of things and lean on them, the better. But in the meantime, there's nothing wrong with using some of these other tools.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell people that I never fear technology because somebody has to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I always say that either I gotta govern it or I gotta tell it what to do, right? Because it won't
Yeah.
know when it went left. Like I hate it went too far, or
Right.
you're not doing it good enough. So I love that. Is there any pet peeves you want to tell us about that just like triggers you when you see it? You're just like, oh, I want to choke this person. I'm just kidding. But are there any triggers that you see out here, whether it's related to business or design or branding that just trigger you?
Sure. So one I mentioned a little earlier, I touched on it a bit, where people believe when they hear the term branding, they think of like a couple small components of branding, and so they're like, oh, I just need a logo and a color scheme, so I could just have my little cousin do the logo in Photoshop, and I can pick some colors off of whatever colors I like. Um, that, like I mentioned before, number one, that is only a small part of your branding. Number two, that is not a good idea. You got to understand that, um, and this is a lesson that I learned in school, but um, the professionals are professional for a reason. And when I went to school, I kind of skipped a little piece of this. I just talked about how was in engineering, then I went over to design. But when I went over to design, I I learned two big things. Number one, I learned design, and but number two, and more importantly, I learned that I didn't know what design was before that. So I thought that because I was an artistic person, that I could draw, that I could basically do any type of creative field. You could just kind of plug me in, just kind of, oh, teach me, the specifics of this, but I got it. But once I actually started understanding the principles of design, I realized I didn't know what design was before I came to school for this. So that lesson really hit home with me because it was more than just my particular industry. It made me think to myself, if I didn't know anything about the design that I am currently in, imagine how little I know about other people's fields that I'm not that I have no familiarity with. I just have surface level understanding. I might just look into my field, like, oh yeah, that looks like it's probably easy to do, but I don't know what's involved in that field. You know what I mean? More than likely, it's way more involved than I realized. And so I say that to say that I think it's important for people to understand that um, if you think you have like a creative eye, or and you may, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are a designer. And so you got to understand that designers are designers for a reason. And like I said, it's more than just aesthetics. It is data driven. Principles of design actually are based off of like a certain level of effectiveness, right? Like, it's like, oh, well, studies show that people respond better to this type of thing as opposed to that type of thing. Just making a call based off aesthetic preference is not going to give you that. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I love that. I
yeah.
always tell I my new thing is just because you are better than someone else at doing something doesn't mean you're good at it. So just because you can, your Canva image came out a little better than somebody else's doesn't mean you're actually good at design itself.
Yep.
So I definitely agree with that, to let experts be experts that have actually decided they want to go down rabbit holes and nerd out and learn about it and do the things. Tell us how we can, stay in contact so that when we're ready for these rebrands, or we can at least touch on the hem of your garment and be like, let me get a little bit better at understanding my brand and what my brand assets should be looking like. Let us know how we can stay in contact with you and any parting words that you have for Corporate Hustle.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, my business is VAJ Design. You could find me on Instagram at VAJ underscore design, Facebook at VAJ Design. My website is www.vajdesign.com. And parting words, I would say, really, I would say just um, trust the experts, right? When on this journey, from entrepreneurship to, well, I mean, entrepreneurship is a lifetime journey, but we grow and develop, right? We grow as people, where businesses grow, our revenue grows, and we're implementing better processes and bringing the proper building the proper team and all that requires trusting the experts, right? We bring on bookkeepers, we bring on project managers, we bring on HR. Even outside of our business, we got a problem with, we got to hire an electrician, we hire an electrician. We're not claiming to know more than the electrician does, we're not claiming to know more than the bookkeeper does. So just keep that in mind across all fields, including design and branding. That's what I would say.
I love it. Well, this has been another awesome interview for the Corporate Hustle Virtual Summit. This is our 5th year. We're bringing you great experts, as you can see, that are very detailed in what they know about their expertise. They are thought leaders. They are not just out here just because it was a trend on the internet. They decided that this is what they're good at, which is why we give you a glimpse into their backgrounds, so that you understand that what they're saying comes from a place of, this is truly what I am supposed to be doing out here, and helping. So when you are ready to, rebrand yourself after you done tried it with the internet, or you just picked some colors out and you have your Pinterest board, that is a great springboard. But understand that building your brand and really having your brand assets set when you're ready to go play big and be big and do the things always requires, for the most part, you bringing in an expert, even if it's just to give you a fresh set of eyes and expertise on what you're doing. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you took notes, because we gave you everything from industry terms. I took him down the rabbit hole, so he gave you true thought leadership when it comes to how technology merges, the psychology of it all. But I always love to talk about branding. And I always know that it's just a great topic that I really want you to understand, that you create brands for yourself inside or outside of corporate America. You're known for what you're known for. So you are cultivating your brand every single day. And then you just hire experts to visually bring it to life. So the more you can articulate that to them, the better off your branding will be and the foundation would be, which is why I chose to ask Victor to come and bless us with his presence here on the Corporate Hustle Virtual Summit Year 5. But I'm Demishia Samuels. That is Victor, and we are out.